This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Sophons and Alien Overlords? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast, along with Jake, my lifelong friend, and we're talking about the Three Body Problem Netflix show, season 1 of the Netflix show. And this has been long overdue, in part one, because the show came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, and secondly, because our most popular Fantology episode, like ever, by far, was our Three Body Problem, or Inheritance of Earth's Past review of the series that we did like 2 or 3 years ago that just blew up on YouTube for whatever reason. The algorithm likes it. And so for a while, we thought we should make more content in this vein, and we never did. And now here we are, ready to once again take over YouTube with the review of the Americanized TV show.
Yeah, how many views does it have? And by blow up, it's like by far our most watched.
Blow up. That was all
episodes.
facetious. This is blow up in terms of Fantology numbers.
Yeah, but so like I don't have our stats board open.
I think it's like in the vein of 20,000 ish.
Yeah, it's like almost as big as like when we were doing like Wheel of Time trailer reactions for season 1 Wheel of Time, right? Which are probably our second biggest kind of things we've ever gotten.
I think our biggest might have been the Breach of Peace
that's true.
review that I did. That's Daniel Green's book, which really was just fortunate because it was literally the first review of his book. And also he is a big popular booktuber and people were curious about his book. So we just kind of beat everyone to the presses with that one. But
Yeah,
as far as like, content, like this one still is, if you look at our monthly numbers, like still that video from several years ago.
Yeah, we tried to capitalize it by doing. Oh, didn't mean to do that. We tried to capitalize on it by doing other. Like he has a collection of short stories, and those no one really seemed to be interested in those. But
got the hashtag wrong. Anyway,
yeah, I'm scrolling through our episodes right now. We've got some pretty funny thumbnails. Congrats to you and Josh on doing those because I never really see the thumbnails. I just click on the link to watch them.
And that one didn't even have video. If you watch the video, it's just a Fantology like logo with audio. So people are watching it on YouTube. Yeah, it's not even our beautiful faces driving up traffic.
Still trying to find it. How far back? Okay, I'm at the very back. The very last one. I think
it's episode. It's got to be in our first 15 to 20.
15 to 20. Okay. Oh yeah, Three Body. Yeah, 23,000 views. What the heck? And in between 270 views and 17 views.
Oof, what was 17?
Fantasy news upcoming.
Fantasy news. Yeah. Yeah, that didn't really take off.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, definitely long overdue. We loved the books, been really looking forward to this adaptation.
So we'll go through kind of high level on the adaptation. We're not going to let's agree, we didn't talk about this before, Jake, but let's agree not to do spoilers past like into books 2 or 3. There are some things that happen in the TV show that don't take place until the second or third books. And I'm going to say we're fine to point out like this plot element is not until later books, but we're not going to talk like specifics of it because obviously if you've seen the show, it's like already played out for you. So I don't think that's really a spoiler knowing that it's a later book.
But we can address what's in the show, right?
Yes. Yep. That's a good way to say it.
Cool.
We will address what's in the show. Okay. So how'd you like it?
A solid 7.5 out of 10. Had some highs, had some lows, but overall, I think it's 7.5. What are your thoughts?
I think initially, so I like binged this on the first weekend. I think at first I was like, I'm loving this. Is like an 8.5. I think by the end, I said it came down to an 8. So I was a little bit higher than you. I think you have to recognize like the monumental challenge this is in adapting this trilogy. It's not even the matter of adapting this one book. You really have to adapt the whole trilogy in order to, I think, give the whole series, like, do it justice with all the different ideas and timelines and everything. So it's just a huge challenge. And I feel like as far as an adaptation went, like, they really did a good job of, playing out all of the, like, they must have had some big board of all the different timelines and everything, and tried to piece it all together and think, how's this going to play best on screen. And I think to that degree, like, logistically, they did a really good job. I think there's some nitpicks and maybe some, like, different elements of how they did things, but in terms of, like, big picture, what are they doing, and how is this how faithful of an adaptation is it in regards to this needs to be something that's going to play on screen? I think that's done really well. Like, from that regard, it's like 9.5 for me. But there were some things, and we can kind of get into it, that there were, slight negatives, kind of drug a little bit through some of the middle episodes. So all in all, like, above average. I enjoyed watching. I'm excited for more. Good show.
Yeah, and this isn't really getting to spoilers of the books or the TV show, but there's different ways that you can go about adapting something for TV, and one is trying to recreate things beat for beat. The others are more like take most of it, but change some things just to be streamlined and make it more cinematic. And then what I think this one has done is basically kind of tried to stay faithful as much to what is important in the book, but it kind of wholesale created new things for it. Again, try not to get in spoilers, but these books are so much more about ideas than characters. And what the series does is, like, there's a conscious decision made with the creators of the show to make it more character focused. Like, I think that was a decision that in order for it to be good TV, we need to make this character focused where the book is not really. And because of that, I think that's why there is a compression of timelines compared to the book series. And like you said, yeah, I imagine there's like this huge room of like whiteboards, like all these like red yarn things tying together, trying to figure out like, okay, this happens at this point. How do we like have that same thing happen, but in our new character focused thing without too many changes? And that is, like you said, that's a monumental effort. I think for the most part, they did a really good job on there. I do think there are some, I don't know if unforgiving, but like unforgivable is the right word, but there's some misses that I think are like kind of critical misses in there. But overall, in terms of like the logistics of it, I think they nailed it. In terms of like, here are all the pieces, we have to shuffle them up and then put them back together in a different way that's more TV friendly. I think they did a really good job. I was more disappointed in some of like the character work and I guess some of the themes I think didn't come across as well. But
Okay. Interesting that you say there are two paths you can take. One is a beat by beat recreation. One is kind of this shuffle it up, because in the first Dave and Dave blockbuster Game of Thrones, right? They started off very much beat by beat through the first several seasons.
yeah,
And then once they started to venture off that beaten path, that's where most people didn't lose interest, but most people say, show kind of went into a little bit of a nosedive. And here we have, they didn't really even attempt that. And like, honestly, I don't think it's possible with the constraints of an 8-episode Netflix series. There's no way they could have done the beat by beat approach.
I think they actually could have. I've only seen the first episode of the Chinese adaptation that came out last year, but I've heard that one is more beat by beat, but
that one's like 30 episodes, I thought, for the first season.
They do the opposite though. They like start adding more stuff to it to pad out those 30 episodes. So I do think because there is a compression of timelines in the Netflix adaptation, where I think if they had 8 episodes dedicated to just three body problem, and I think they could have done a beat by beat. I'm not saying a beat by beat would have been a better TV show or not, but I think they could have filled the time. Like that would have been a good amount of time for it.
Mm,
It's interesting you bring up the Game of Thrones. I feel like anytime there's a book adaptation to TV, like since Game of Thrones, it's always been you
right.
can't compare this to Game of Thrones. This isn't the next Game of Thrones. Like these
But
comparisons are
this
not
time we can,
valid.
right?
This time we literally can, and it's hilarious because it's not another fantasy adaptation. It is this completely different series,
Mm,
completely different genre and like style of book. But this is the one that we can most truly like compare to Game of Thrones because it's the same people adapting it. And I just think that like the irony there is fun. I do think from like my criticisms I'll get into later, I do think this is more along the lines of the quality of the weaker Game of Thrones seasons
do you
in
want to
terms.
do you want to pause that for now and because of
Yeah,
spoilers or okay.
yeah. Until we're ready to go into spoilers, I again no at a non-spoiler level, I'll just say in terms of how characters are written, dialogue is written, and like plot points develop. I think it's more in line with maybe not season 8, but more like not well, no, probably more like season 8, honestly. I do think there's something to say that season 8 left such a bad taste because of the highs
Mm,
of the previous
sure.
seasons. Whereas if season 8 were its own thing, like it didn't have any
Hmm.
comparison there, I think people would like it more. But
Okay. I yeah, it is really tough to compare, even though you just said we can't compare them. It's
no, we
yeah,
can, we're doing it.
yeah, it's a
This is
tough
a
comparison to
this
make.
is official.
Yeah. I also want to pause on I want to pause for sake of spoilers as well on that previous conversation of could it have been possible to make it more like the book? Because I think there's another reason related to characters, but we'll get into that more once we talk more spoilers for the show. As far as like non-spoiler things for people who haven't watched yet, like what are people getting in for? It's obviously this like big sci-fi thing. I think it's been kind of billed as like maybe kind of complex, lots of plot lines. You've got to focus on it. You can't just casually watch. Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you do need to pay attention more. And it's not so much because um there's a lot of like nuance and subtext, but more so that there's just a ton of information being thrown out there and things get so wacky that you have to be paying attention to like understand why these wacky
Mm,
things are happening without feeling like, okay, this just doesn't make any sense. They're going from one crazy situation to another. Um, so you have to pay attention to understand that, okay,
yeah.
there's some reasoning for this to be happening. But
And I wish this could have worked out where we had someone who hadn't read the books on to review the TV show because both of us had read the book. So our experience is
yeah,
obviously pretty different because we're watching it from the lens of we're looking forward to these scenes. We're wondering how they're going to translate versus and as I was watching, I was trying to think like, what if I didn't know what was going on? Like, would I be following? I feel like you can
yeah,
still follow pretty well. Like, I don't feel like it's overly complicated, but you do have to like, you can't be watching your phone at the same time.
yeah. And this is kind of part of that minor criticism I have of um I do I think there are like more info dumpy moments where as long as you're paying attention to
Mm,
those moments, you can follow along to your point of like it's not overly complicated. It's not like um all of yeah. I really want to compare this to Dark, another Netflix sci-fi series. Um which you haven't seen, but I will say for those who
every like 10th episode of Fantology, I get in trouble for this.
well no, I'm not gonna
One of these times I'm just
chastise
gonna
you.
binge it, and next time you're gonna throw it out there, I'm gonna be like, actually, I have my favorite episode is in season 3.
Well, the thing about Dark, that I think is the best sci-fi TV show I've seen maybe like ever. It's so good. And that one does use a lot of subtext and a lot of like cinematography and um like dialogue that isn't super info dumpy that you need to be paying attention to, and the plot itself is so complicated that like you're trying to piece it together. It's a show that is so good for rewatching it because you just pick up on so many of the hints that are laid ahead of time as you rewatch it. And I don't think, for better for worse, I don't think Three Body Problem does as good of a job with that. There are more info dumpy moments, which can make it so people can follow along better. But to your point, yeah, you do still have to be paying attention because, again, just like if you miss like one of those info dumps, then all of a sudden you're seeing this crazy thing happening. You're like, wait, this makes no sense that this could ever happen. And you might just turn off your brain when you just missed the explanation, you know?
Okay, so that said, let's go into spoilers now, or at least for again, no spoilers into future books, only the events of season 1 of the TV show. So that's happening now.
Yeah.
So the reason why I feel like they had to do it this way in order for it to fit into the 8-episode Netflix thing is because I think it had to be more character focused. I don't think it would have been. I just don't think there's room for like in that in a binge model where characters and like actors and actresses are so important. Like you can't have multiple different casts coming in if it's going to be one interconnected show. And I just feel like it would be too much if they didn't try to like compress the timeline, combine characters.
Yeah.
And like, could you do it? Like, yeah, on paper, like, yes, but would it work out? I just feel like it'd be so risky.
Yeah, I do think, and like this is more disappointing for me and my personal taste. I do think they went more of the route of how can we make this appeal to the most people possible rather than how can we make this the best like piece of art possible.
I would
Like I
agree with
think
that. Yeah, sure.
which I do think like hinders it to a degree, but in terms of like that doesn't mean that they adapted it poorly. It means, you know, they had a different goal in mind, and I think they did really well with that goal. Like you said, the making it more character focused, I think gives that more mass appeal. I think it would serve really well as a more like the books are kind of more of an anthology. You know, you follow one set of characters, the first book, another set, the next book, another set, the next book. And I think that works, like anthologies work on TV all the time. So I think
But are they popular? Like, what's the
they're
most
not as
popular?
popular. Yeah.
American Horror Story, maybe?
Yeah, and that's more like each. I haven't seen that, but I assume that's more like each
Or
episode.
True
No, those.
Detective?
Oh yeah, True Detective. The
But everyone says with those, Fargo is another one, right? But
the
with those,
Haunting of.
don't people say, they like season 1 or season 3 or whatever? Like most people are not maybe super connected to them because they know it's going to be a brand new thing every time.
Well, with True Detective, season 1 is just by far the best, and I do think that is the main reason why people don't watch season 2 or 3 as much of True Detective. Even though 2 and 3 are really good, but maybe if 2 and 3 follow the same characters, people would want to continue watching them just for the sake of the characters. But yeah, I think they did a really good job of given the task of making more character focused. I think they did a really good job of that. And I like how they made it this ensemble cast. And I don't know if this would have been my choice, but they did a really good job of taking bits and pieces of characters from the books and kind of like putting them into these newly created characters for the show.
Right.
Like in some instances, like the man, I don't know anyone's names. Wong, I think, was the guy in the first book who was creating the nanofibers.
Okay, so not Wong Comma Benedict, Wong
No,
from the book. Okay, the net.
yeah.
So basically, like the character that Augie replaced.
Yeah. So Augie is pretty much one-to-one Wong for most of this,
Okay.
for most of season 1, but there are hints and pieces of her for other characters later on. And who's the friend who was in the virtual reality?
Sam's character?
with Sam, who's the girl,
Sam.
the
Jin.
girl from New Zealand, Jen. So Jen is basically, I think the character, this is a character in book 3, but I think her name is like Shin or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Book
she's
3.
pretty,
Yep.
she's pretty much the protagonist of book 3, or will fill that same role in a lot of ways. But most of her in season 1 wasn't that until like the second half, and then it starts to build up towards that.
She was my favorite character in the TV show in this season.
Yeah, I liked watching her POV a lot, because that's where most of I think the mystery was. Even though I feel like Augie was kind of pitched as like the main character from the beginning, but once the countdown stopped, I kind of lost interest. I don't think
I'm not
she was
really
a
sure
very
where
well-written character.
not really sure where her character's going. That was one of my negatives.
Yeah, I think she'll probably fill a role from one of the characters in book 3. One of the I don't remember like any of these names. I just kind of scanned over them when I was reading them. But and then we have Saul is basically Luo Ji, right?
Right.
Whereas pretty much everything aside from the wall facer part, he was just, I don't know if he represented anyone else's characters.
Seemed like he was just kind of new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through most. And that was fun, as I realized later on that, okay, like he's the wall facer, he's the Walji, like he's gonna be. Yeah.
As book readers, I think that this was a fun experience, because you start to see, okay, these aren't one-to-one characters, and so you start to see like them reflect different aspects of characters throughout. Like before I caught on that, who's the guy who had a crush on Jin, who gets rocketed off to space? Will. Before I caught on that Will was the character from book 3, he builds those ships, and it was right when he built the origami ship that I was like, oh, that's a reference to book 3. And then I was like, oh wait, he's like, this is a reference to like, he's going to be this character from book 3 later on. Anyway, yeah, so that was like, those little, they feel like Easter eggs, but they're not really Easter eggs. They're more for there's like little hints you can pick up as a book reader.
There was some there's some artistic representation for you with the origami ships. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and again, I think like that was like, they set up so much for the whole series later on in this first season. I think they do a really good job of that, which is necessary if you are going to adapt it in a way where you compress the timelines. You want this ensemble cast to be kind of the face of it for, I assume, the next 2 seasons, but I don't know how many seasons they're planning on doing. But
I feel like, I mean, with the amount that they covered in this season, it can't be more than 3.
Yeah, it can't be more than 3. I feel like 2 might be a little too short.
Yeah, but I think 3.
Yeah.
3 books, 3 seasons. Sounds good.
But my issue with this is I don't think Augie was very well written. Past like I feel like her motivations were very like melodramatic.
Once it got through the countdown and through, and I guess she was really part of the Panama Canal and Judgment Day part, like, and she brought kind of the human element of like, oh my gosh, we just kill all these people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so there was some of that, but then when the season ended, I was like, where are we at with her? Like, what is she doing now?
I just don't think they did a good job writing her character to feel like, I think each emotion she felt was like, okay, that's an understandable emotion for her to feel, but they just kind of like moved through them kind of quickly in a way where it did feel like a smooth character progression. It just felt kind of melodramatic. And I think a lot of the characterization, not just her character, felt that way. I don't know. I don't think that I don't have the right words for it, but I don't think the characters are written very well in that aspect.
She's just like in a agglomeration of different emotions and not like a fully pieced together, smoothed over person.
Yeah, it's just like, it felt like the audience needs to be feeling this right now. And again, not just her character, but in general, the audience needs to be feeling this right now. So the characters on screen will now feel this without like a smooth, like reaching there. And that's why I think it's an apt comparison to season 8 of Game of Thrones, where this needs to be happening now, and we didn't really do a good enough job building up to that point. But
Okay.
like you can still, like, looking like from a bird's eye view, you can see, oh yeah, A happened, then B happened, then C happened. That makes sense, but not in the not in the way it like developed out,
The pacing of the season was a
Pacing,
little
that's the word.
funny.
Yeah.
Pacing, yeah. It was a little funny because the first 2 or 3 episodes, kind of slow build up. There was this mystery, the group of friends. It was all over a shorter amount of time. And then in the middle, it kind of drug a little bit, but also like events started really like bam, 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 like really big stuff is happening. And
The
then
stakes
like past
escalated
like
super
yeah,
high.
yeah, there you go. Stakes escalated for sure. And then once we get into episodes like 6 or 7, it's like, holy crap, the world's ending here. And but at the same time, like there's these human stories of Will kind of at the beach, right? And
Yeah.
so like you need the slower stuff and the faster stuff, and you've got to kind of blend all of that. But yeah, it did seem like certainly there was maybe some clunkiness to it.
Yeah. It felt kind of clunky there. And I think a lot of the dialogue felt kind of clunky. And again, not bad. Like it's a 7.5 in my opinion, which isn't bad TV. But it was like,
Because there's a lot of like bad TV that
yeah.
comes out these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my biggest issue is like the amazing part of these books were the ideas, and the decision was, okay, we're going to take these amazing ideas and have great characters to follow. And so there's this big focus on the characters, and I don't think the characters were done as well as the ideas of
Hmm.
the story are. And so at that point, it's like, well, just focus on the ideas then. Like, but
So what ideas do you think were compromised?
I don't think the ideas were compromised so much. Well, I think I yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't, yeah, I don't know if I would say the ideas are compromised. I don't know if I meant to say that. But I don't like, I think things were rushed through. And again, going to that one-to-one comparison, like I think if we could have built the mystery more, like a mystery was a big part of it, but
Hmm.
it was more just like we don't know what's happening, rather than in the books it felt like people were trying to piece things together, and you got to see people trying to understand this. And instead in the series it seemed more just like,
Hmm.
wow, this just happened, we don't understand why, and then this happened, we don't understand why. um I think a big theme thing that was off for me is I don't think they really fleshed out Wen-Ji's character enough to like help the audience understand why she decided to contact the
Okay.
aliens
That's what I was
anyways.
gonna, yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about next, because that was a really big theme of the first book is this character decides that humanity sucks and we need aliens to come in and take over because the alien overlords are going to be better. And
Yeah,
yeah, and that's kind of a running theme that the whole series explores. So you don't feel like that was
I don't
delivered
think,
upon as well.
no, and like because
But I mean,
again,
they
if
did spend a lot of time with the flashbacks and the Cultural Revolution
yeah,
stuff, and you and I feel like I understood her motivation pretty well. But
I don't think it
it
was
just kind of,
clear from the
I
book
guess it
or
just
from the
came
series.
down. It just came down to that one like kind of leering guard
Yeah,
that she met
she
up
goes
with
to get
later.
revenge
Yeah.
on. Yeah. And in the book, I think it's really clear that she realizes this guard is also suffering under the system. And even though she committed so much atrocity and pain against me, like she's also suffering from it, and realizing that
Mm,
like there's nothing humanity can do to fix this, because we're just like hurting each other and causing more and more pain. And I think that was really clear in the book. Whereas here it's just
okay.
like, I want revenge, and then oh, the guard is suffering. The guard I wanted revenge on is like, that doesn't have an arm now. It didn't really like connect. I didn't feel like it did a good job connecting back.
Mm,
Again, we might need to hear from people who only watch the show to see like why they
yeah.
thought when G contacted at that point.
No, you're right. Like because it's a really big decision to say that we're
Yeah,
going to
it's a
bring
huge
in
decision,
aliens to take over all of humanity, right?
especially when
And
the alien
And
I've talked
and
to
she
says don't
continues,
do it.
yeah, and she continues to feel justified in doing this like her whole life, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, she doesn't veer from this at all. And yeah, maybe it's a little underdeveloped to just think that this really crappy thing happened to me personally, and then I have this one experience with this guard, and now I'm like, oh, the world might suck for everyone.
yeah. And I don't think that like in
Yeah.
the book it connects back to that. What's the book called? Not A New Spring, but I don't know, like the environmental book.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I don't remember. It's no, New Spring is by Robert Jordan.
yeah, I know. um, but like in the book it connects, like those ideas all connect together too, that she's like, not only are we hurting ourselves, we're hurting the planet, like we need to be
Mm,
we are not being good stewards over ourselves or the earth, like we need intervention to save ourselves and to save people from us. Like that's like her, that that was like the idea that I think came across really well in the book. And in the show it didn't really come across that way. And then she kind of says it later, but you don't
okay.
understand why she does it in the moment. And it's not meant, it doesn't feel like it's meant to be like
Yeah, you're
mystery. It's
right.
like, I don't know.
I don't really remember. Yeah, from watching the TV show, I don't think I even like realized the significance of those parts on her character. Because it's been a while since I've read the book. So, and
Yeah,
watching the
same.
show, I'm like trying to kind of piece together what happened, what's different, and everything. And so I feel like I have a little bit of a fresh take on the series, and I did not appreciate the significance of what that was supposed to do for her character until you just brought that up.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then I'm trying to think if there, so that's my biggest criticism, is I think that pivotal moment wasn't uh built up. It didn't make enough sense based on the way it was
Mm,
developed. And then also I think I get that this is an adaptation of a Chinese science fiction novel for a Western audience, but I don't think it needed to be like so much for a Western audience. Like one of the coolest things about the book series as well is because it has such a Chinese influence on it. Like for someone who grew up reading like Western science fiction, there's so much like just new things that I'd never really encountered, new ways of thinking,
mm.
like perspectives on the world, on humanity, on like the purpose of life.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, now that you say that, I remember I feel like in our review of the books, we talked a lot about that, like the differences in Western versus Eastern thinking and how a lot of these ideas were new to us. And I don't remember exactly what we said, but
more so for
yeah,
the Dark Forest, but yeah, that
okay,
book.
sure. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I think a lot of that is lost on this. Like, and it almost, not that it's like whitewash, and I don't want to get into like, I'm not trying to be like political about it, but I think like the work of art itself is like lacking a lot of its heart because of that. Um,
Mm,
like the only real Chinese like part of this show is just Wen Ji and her background.
hmm.
Whereas in the book, so many of the characters were Chinese, and again, I don't think it's like so much an issue of like changing people's races as much as, I don't know, it's almost like they like had, okay, the Chinese backstory and now everything takes place in Britain and everyone is British or American.
Like the almost like the cultural identity of some of the ideas and themes or
Yeah, it just felt like, I don't know.
hmm.
I don't understand. I mean, I again, maybe that was like in order for ratings, that was necessary to get people in the West to watch it. But at the same time, even though Germany is in the West, Dark is like my favorite science fiction show ever, and the whole show is in German. Like they didn't, you know what I mean? It's not like they needed to like have the show be in English or have the show take place in America or in Great Britain or something in order for it to
Right.
be of good
But
quality.
there's a difference between quality and mass appeal, right? And
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
which one do you think Netflix cares about?
I understand that, but I think it suffered a lot for that reason.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean it's still an international cast that and characters. They have characters of lots of different races and backgrounds and such, but yeah, like you're right. It's
Culturally,
primarily yeah, it's
like culturally,
primarily Eastern culture in the books, and it's
and
not
that's
as
been
much.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
think, and
Yeah.
again, like I think that is the bigger part than like any one character or actor's like ethnicity is just like what it like you're losing the like the cultural foundation for a lot of this
Hmm.
story, and that is like way more impactful on a story than an individual character's like makeup. But
Yeah, I think those are some fair criticisms. Okay, let's talk about some highlights and lowlights, just like moments, things like to get us started, I'll say my favorite part was towards the end of the show when Dr. Ya does the Einstein riddle to Saul when
mhm.
they're at the graveyard. And this is something that happens in the book and is a great foreshadow into book two. And I like that they didn't reveal it in this
Yeah,
season. And I also like, and there was some good kind of subtle foreshadowing in like the books that she was picking up before going out to meet with Saul. And so there were lots of hints. I think as a book reader, this moment will be much more popular for people who've read the books than people who are just watching the show. Because I suspect this is pretty hard to unravel if you have not read the books. Like I would honestly be really impressed if someone without reading the books
yeah,
was able to say like, oh, this is what this means, right? Because this is like that's like the whole point of the second book.
yeah,
But I really like that.
yeah. And again, I think they do a really good job with foreshadowing and like laying down some foundation for things that happen later. Um, I may have criticism with the pacing, but I do think they are getting the right beats down. Maybe not just in the right places, but I
Hmm.
like that we have the paper ships, and we see that. We see Will reading his book of fairy tales, which uh, I don't think a book of fairy tales was in any of the books, but like as a book reader, you know where that's heading, you
Uh,
know. And for those that haven't read the books, it'll become apparent why that is important later
yeah.
on. And so I
Each of the
think they're
books has each one has some kind of separate imaginative moments and themes to them.
mhm.
I don't know what the right word is, but yeah, and that's one of one of the charms, one of the appeals to the series.
Well, and also I like there's a specific hugely important plot point in book three that
Hmm.
utilizes
With the fairy tales. Yeah,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So yeah, I think they do a really good job with that. And I this is like maybe a pro, maybe a con. They made things a lot more brutal than I feel like the book was. Like the book, and again, this is probably more that like Eastern thinking that we were introduced to. But there's a lot more like what would come across as maybe coldness or willingness to let people be sacrificed for
Hmm.
um, the greater good and common like human survival. Which they kind of go into here, but I feel like they made thing in the book. It's more like accepted, like this is a loss that has to happen, and it's not really as gruesome. And man, like specifically that Panama scene, I don't remember ever thinking there were children on that ship in the book. I'd have to go back in and read it. Um, but I feel like that was a lot darker than how the
Yeah,
book portrayed
it
it.
was really dark. I would also have to go back and see. I mean, I think there would have been, right? Like at the time
I
the whole like Earth Trisolarian organization was on the ship, weren't they?
yeah,
Is that
but in
true
this
or no?
maybe not all of them, but like the head honchos were for sure.
Uh-huh.
But in the TV show, they really set it up as they don't say ETO, but that was the name of the organization in the books.
Right, right.
They set up the ETO to be more like this Heaven's Gate, like religious alien
Hmm.
salvation cult. And I think that's why they had children on the. They made the decision at Netflix to have children on the boat and everything to like make this really feel like this like cult. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Calling the aliens Lord and everything. Yeah.
Whereas I think in the, if I'm remembering correctly, like correct us if we're wrong, it was more just like the the leaders were on the ship. Like I don't think it was like a commune in the way it
Hmm.
was in the TV
Like,
show.
yeah, I don't remember. Maybe it
I
was
could,
some gathering of all the leaders, so they tried to take
yeah,
him out. Yeah, we're just speculating at this point. We could just
yeah,
read the book but anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
I could be wrong, but even if there were children on the book or on the boat in the book, it was not like there was no like description of like children running for their lives and like,
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of the violence was definitely more brutal in
yeah,
this show than, yeah, like you say, in the book, certainly people died and there was violence, but it was not focused on nearly as
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Also, that scene, like, it was certainly, a visual thing to see the nanofibers slice the boat across like Swiss cheese. But like some
Did
of
it go
the
on too
effects
long?
there, yeah, well, the effects there were kind of cheesy, especially like the bodies
Yeah,
like falling apart. Like, yeah, doesn't. I mean, I've never seen a body turn into Swiss cheese, but it also looked very silly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the budget is what they have. I think that's
Yeah,
one where you can't compare it to Game of Thrones is I assume the budgets are very different.
yeah, and it's easy to say, oh, the special effects were cheap, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, it is what it is. They, for the most part, they were like pretty good. The only two
yeah.
times that the special effects were kind of weird was that and the part in level 3 of the video game part where they were all like all the suns lined up and it
Oh
became
yeah,
a,
the
a
floating
gravity
and
thing and everyone was floating
yeah,
around. Like, that didn't look great either, but other than that, it was pretty good.
yeah. Also on the boat, it didn't like if you follow when people are getting cut and like where people are running and turning, like it made no sense that people got as far as they did. Like it's just going straight across and you have people running like this and like this, you know what I mean? And like
they're
they're
running
taking too
they're
many
running
left turns.
they're running faster when they're going parallel to the nanofibers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, I also think I liked the um like the you are bugs. Like I think that came across pretty well. And the eye in the sky, I didn't realize this
uh,
until watching one of Quinn's ideas videos. That was actually what happened on Trisolaris when they first created the Sophon, as they unfolded it and into the different dimensions, they found pocket dimensions of civilization, and that's what the eye was them looking on it. But I think it was cool how they adapted it in the TV show to be like the Sophon around the Earth and like looking down. I thought
hmm.
that was cool.
You just reminded me of something with what was the thing you said before the cell phones? Oh, the UR bugs
Oh,
thing. I think
yeah.
that, yeah, I remember people on the Discord that haven't read the books on our Fantology Discord were a little confused on that because it seemed like all of a sudden they were able to take over everyone's phones and mess with technology and everything. And then next episode, it's kind of like back to normal, except Sophons are spying on us. And it was
Yeah.
kind of strange. Like, why didn't, if they're now the enemy and they're like aggressive in this moment, why are they now like backed off for no reason?
I That's a criticism I have of the show in general is I think they give the Sophons like more power than they had in the books. Like I don't remember when the sky turned off in the books. Didn't that only happen for like I think it only happened for the main character. I don't think everyone
I
on the
don't,
Earth saw
yeah,
that.
I don't remember, but there were definitely some limitations to the Sophons that made the
Yeah.
plot possible.
Whereas in the show, everyone saw the night flicker, and I don't know how like the logistics of it is the Sophon is messing with the people's like vision, whether on the nerves or whatever. And you could do that for an individual, maybe a couple people if you're moving at close to the speed of light, but there's no way you could do that for every person on the earth at the same time, you know?
Well, in the show, are they just saying that happened because the Sophon like unfolded and broadcasted some like star flickering signal
Oh, is
across
that
the
what it's
world?
supposed to be? I didn't realize that.
That's how I took it for the show because I couldn't
Oh,
remember
okay.
what happened in the book.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it does feel like the Sophons it's not consistent with their power levels. I think they really wanted to showcase the like how insignificant humans are compared to their
Mm.
technology. And I think they went more on the side of melodrama than
Yeah, it was definitely
I
like a
would have
big
liked.
shock moment. Everything was
Yeah.
shut down. It seemed like everyone's, humanity is basically over here. riots start, etc. And then all of a sudden, you got 400 years.
Yeah, and okay, another scene. So when they find out when the Trisolarians find out that humans can lie, that they can hide their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that part was almost good, but then it was like they're like, wait, you don't have fables on your planet? They clearly do. They're telling fables like in the VR game. Like that is clearly the same thing as telling a story of like Little Red Riding Hood. Like I think they went too far. Like in the
But are
show,
they
they
doing
not
that, or is that human engineered by the
well
ETO people?
the Sophon lady is in the game.
But are like, is the content for that created by the humans in order to connect with the other humans they want playing the game? But direct as directed, like is the Sophon the director of that, and the humans are the creative team?
Maybe it made it seem like in the show that the like everything, the technology, everything was created by the Trisolarians, and that's why it was so advanced in the
Mm,
show. But
definitely the technology, yeah.
first of all, in the book, it never said that the like Trisolarians never knew how to like talk about things in allegory or anything like that. It's just the fact that they can't lie to somebody. Like as soon as, and I don't know if this is spoilery, but basically their thoughts are like the way they communicate is they can see each other's thoughts essentially, like they see the brain waves, and so you can't be thinking something that someone else wouldn't know. But that doesn't preclude you from being able to talk in allegory at all. And it went
Mm,
from, and the show went from like, oh, why, how did Little Red Riding Hood not know that it's the wolf? And then explaining that, oh, they're lying. And it goes from them understanding humans can lie to them saying, like, what is a fairy tale? Like that just seemed, like it went from
mm.
not just you can't deceive someone to we only speak in direct literal truths, which I feel like that was a weird leap in logic that didn't make sense to me.
Wonder if they're trying to connect to later season, which what I'm guessing they're going to
Maybe,
try to do
maybe
with,
it,
yeah.
yeah, it just, I don't know. It didn't,
Hmm.
but I feel like that would take away from that part of that book because a lot of effort was made to, not to get into spoilers, a lot of effort was
Yeah, you're
made to
right.
have things
Yeah,
happen the
sure,
way it
sure.
happened. Um,
In
anyways,
order to, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and if it is what they're if it is setting up what you said, then that effort would be not required at all. But
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, definitely some things.
yeah.
Trying to looking at my notes here. Oh, a couple other minor things. Do you think Sam's character was Jack
Mhm.
Rooney?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he was needed?
I mean, he is based off of a guy from book three.
Okay, so I wasn't
From
sure.
his
I
name.
couldn't remember. I thought he was like entirely a new creation.
No, it was, and again, I only picked up on this because of Quinn's ideas recap video, but there was a guy, so the person Will is analogous with in book three, he had a friend who created this like green drink company and got super rich off of it
Hmm.
and gave all that money to him. And that's how he had the money to buy the star.
Okay.
So that like, but I think that was the extent of his relationship. And he was also part of the same friend group with Jin's character from book three. And so it seems like they're kind of adapting that friend group to be like the like main the basis of the relationship. I don't think he was necessary though, really. Going that route. I think what he added was like trying to add some humor, and I don't think it landed super well most of the time. But again, it might just be the actor and like the way I view him. Because the only other things I've seen him in is Game of Thrones, which I think he does a great job there, and then Moonfall. And Moonfall is this terribly great sci-fi movie, and I think he plays like a scientist in that. So kind of a similar role,
Hmm.
but
I was thinking right up like basically the scene or two before he was killed, I was like, man, this show has too many characters right now. There's too much stuff going on. And then he was gone. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, I guess they thought the same thing. And
Yeah.
like he added some humanity through the first, what, three? Was he just through 3 episodes, maybe four?
I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was
He felt
fine,
he
but
was
like,
there for about half the season. That's what it felt like.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was super necessary. The other thing that the other character that I don't really think was necessary was the Raj
Yeah.
boyfriend. I feel like that was just kind of thrown in there to add some character, trouble dynamic between Will and Jin. And I really liked the Will and Jin relationship, and I really like where I assume they're going with that later
Hmm.
on. But I don't know if they needed the attractive boyfriend, macho man character in there to really did they need that? He didn't really add anything else.
Yeah, I think they're adapting him to be a character from book two. So I think him as a character, I think it's
Okay.
fine that they're setting him up
I guess
now.
if he does more, then yeah, that could
But
be.
my criticism with him being in that love triangle and everything, and I think this is a criticism that is fair for all the characters knowing each other, is it's like too serendipitous that all of
Oh
these
yeah,
people
yeah, yep.
critical
That's a good
to
one.
like to
Uh,
this global event happen to all have been friends and like connected, like they're all connected. Whereas in the
right.
books, certain characters were like Luo Ji had that connection to uh yeah, Wen Ji, and Will's character had the connection to Jen's character, and like there are, but instead it's like all these people happen to
Yeah.
like know each other, and then throw in Raj. Oh yeah, here's a character we're gonna need for season two probably. Let's make him dating one of these characters. Like I don't. It just it like pulls you,
Right.
like the suspension of disbelief is kind of shattered by that a little
Right.
bit.
Right. Like Davos needs a new hero to help him out with
Yeah,
his next plot. And he's like, yeah, I'll get another friend. I'm sure they've got
yeah,
another one that can do this
yeah.
critical thing for me.
Exactly. Whereas the book, it felt like, and that's why it kind of felt more like an anthology in the book, is it's more real to life that like the people who
Hmm.
are that are going to be helping solve these things, like they come from all over, and like
Yeah.
they will not just come from all over, but like they're not going to know each other,
Yeah.
necessarily. I
More
think
real to
Davos was
life,
a,
but
yeah.
maybe harder to like blend into a cohesive narrative. But I think we've already kind of talked through that. But
I
yeah.
don't know if they would have needed to. You could have just had these be like two or three separate friend groups at the, like that alone, or you know
Yeah.
what I mean? They just didn't all need to know each other and be chilling at this beach house, and
Right. Right.
that's part of like the, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the stuff that's more similar to like the worst the worst seasons of Game of
Everything's
Thrones.
just conveniently happening in Game of Thrones at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
What were
just
you
kind of
gonna
like cheesy.
but what were you gonna say about Thomas Wade there?
Oh, I think he was a little over the top. Like
Too brutal.
not just too brutal, but like you can be that brutal and come across as like the Blackthorn, like Dalinar or something. I could
Mhm.
see that type of characterization being that brutal, and it being more like I could take that seriously. But he had like too much swagger about it, and like he was trying to have, I felt like he was like trying to be this charismatic, brutal person in a weird way, where I think it would have come across better if he was just more like cold about it and like
Yeah.
detached.
Maybe I missed something, but I feel like it was never like super clearly defined even what group he was in and how it fit into like the
It,
international
yeah.
efforts. He was just like he just had to sign off for anything in the world.
And I feel like the books did a better job of like there's politicking, between the nations, like trying to decide
Mm,
like the most you get from that is in the flashback where it's like, well, the US is trying to contact outside the universes, or outside the solar system as well. But like especially in the first and second book, like you have these like very tentative coalitions between nations trying to save humanity while also trying to not get like screwed
mhm.
out by other factions of humanity. And instead it's, yeah, like you said, Thomas Wade, like he shows his ID to Raj. You have no idea like what he's part of, but he can just do whatever.
Yeah.
And somehow Raj is aware that there is like he's aware of the exact organization Thomas Wade is from, because he sees the idea. He's like, oh, okay, I want to work for you. But how would he be aware of an organization that powerful that just does whatever, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe his ID just says like I am Donald Trump or something, like do what I want.
Yeah.
um, Other things. Well, okay, to go one more thing on Thomas Wade. I think it works better that he's in book 3 because at that point the international conflict is better established. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so his role, and I don't remember exactly, but I'm assuming that at that point in the narrative, whatever's going on there and all those tensions have kind of like been established and explained more clearly rather than have that be like the thing from right at the beginning. To close the loop on that, at the end of the season, when we introduce our new wall facers, I'm glad that they did, at least they didn't pull those from the group of friends, and they're bringing in
Yeah.
basically some of the other wall facers are like slightly different, but that should be like expanding it to more of an international conflict, which at this point it like really needs to be.
Yeah. I think they did one fewer wall facers in the show. I thought Luoji was
Like,
like the fourth one, but in this he was just the third.
oh
So
yeah, I think there were.
I wonder if they're
Mm,
dropping one of the plans or they're kind of combining them or what.
mhm. I think, oh, another thing they did a good job of, and someone that on Discord had a question on was why they were wondering why Luoji was chosen and never really explained in the show. But the reason is there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something you might be able to pick up on. Again, challenging for sure. But that's in there enough where I think that'll have some nice payoff in the second season.
Yeah, I think the book did that really well, and the TV show did a good job adapting that aspect, like that mystery to it, where like there are clues, but you're kind of at a loss. I also think they did a really good job of of him saying like, "Okay, I quit," and they're like, "Of course, okay. Now
Yeah,
what
yeah.
can I do for you?" I think that was
Uh-huh.
because that was a great part of the book. I am interested to see how much they adapt of that plot line from book 2 in the next season because it gets kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I feel like they're
yeah.
dropping a lot of it, a lot of the crazier aspects of it.
Hmm.
Although I could see, I don't know.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't we said we wouldn't talk too much about
Yeah.
the future books, so kind of tough, but hmm. I wonder what they'll do with Saul and Augie because it seemed kind of weird to me that they had this like clearly past relationship that was like never really addressed. But towards the end, they were like kind of reconnecting, but then
Yeah.
like nothing ever really happened. Like, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
maybe in the future that'll be part of her character. Because again, I don't know where her character's going.
Yeah. I'm not sure where her character is going. I think she's going to be sucked into Saul's plot line for the future. But
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah.
Okay, final thing. We didn't talk about any of the video. Well, we don't just very briefly talked about the video game stuff, and that was a big aspect of the show and something that I wanted to see adapted because I thought a lot of those ideas were really
Mhm.
cool. I thought like overall the video game parts were all pretty fun and they didn't
Yeah.
focus on it too much. Like it I feel like it could be really tempting in adapting the show to be like, this part was really cool. So let's make it awesome and blow all our budget on it and like really play
Yeah.
it up. But they didn't overindulge in it. And they kept it to the right amount of time to make it a mystery and kind of string people along and bring out the different levels and really kind of like level up the understanding of the enemy. And uh, I thought that was one of the better parts.
Yeah. I thought it was fine. It's just so it is one of those things I'm like, this is so weird. I don't know like how many people are going to get through this. And not a criticism of the adaptation or as at all, but like it is something that I think works better as a book. And so props to them for, doing it still. Cause I could see some adaptations just be like, oh, we're skipping the video game aspect of it. Um,
Mm,
but they went for it and it was weird, just like it's weird in the book. And I think they did a pretty good job of it. Um, the dehydration part, like I would not have thought they would do that and show that in the show like that. I think they would. I just assumed that would have been like a line that was dropped to explain
Mm.
something, but yeah, that was pretty funny.
But the whole dehydration part with the Santi is something that
Oh,
comes up.
you know,
So
yeah,
that
that's super
isn't,
important. I just thought
yeah.
they would like mention it in dialogue rather than show it in the video game, which I thought that was fun that
Mm.
they did because
Oh,
it is such a
gotcha.
shocking moment when you in the book you're like, what is happening? But
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we covered. I really hope that they keep on going. I know there was some speculation, Netflix always cancels things on a whim and whatnot, and viewership numbers were like, I don't know, maybe a little disappointing, but it seems like I have seen some articles lately that say like it's still kind of up there. Numbers are holding steady. It hasn't been a big drop off after initial drops. So hopefully, and I mean,
yeah,
with the commitment they made to Dave and Dave, it seems like, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to greenlight everything they're ever going to do, but it's almost like at some point you got to tell people like these guys we're betting on and we're gonna ride this through.
yeah, Netflix. Well, to tie it back to Dark again, basically Dark. Everyone should watch Dark and compare to this to see like the difference in quality there. First of all, just because Dark like is executed so well. But I have beef with Netflix because the creators of Dark got greenlit by Netflix again to start a new series, and
Oh, right. That
the
like boat.
18
Yeah, the
yeah
boat thing. Yeah.
yeah, and they said that they were going to do like the story, and it is in 3 seasons, and it's a big mystery, and so you get like a drop of knowledge at the end of season one that like recontextualizes everything you've seen from season one, but you still like have no answers, and then they cancel it. It's like, so that bothers me. I don't think Netflix under like the people in charge of canceling don't understand how to value their products well. If you're on a subscription model, they got to add like a free ad tier or something, and then line up viewership counts with like how much money it would have made
Jake,
from
you've
ads. I
worked
don't
you've
know.
worked in corporate America a little bit. I mean, you understand what's going on here with these bozos that are in charge of our companies.
Anyways, yeah,
That's a whole
I
different
hope
conversation
yeah,
that, yeah.
I hope they don't cancel through Body Problem. I hope we get to see through the end of it. I don't think Netflix understood how to market it either. They were just like, watch this wacky show, which it is
Basically, yeah.
wacky, but like their trailers are all over the place. And like, I don't know. I don't think they did a good job of trying to market it, to be honest. So, but hopefully they have something in the contract with D&D to
Uh,
actually finish it.
yeah, I do wonder what people expected going in and if those expectations were anywhere close to what they saw.
Yeah, and like what was Netflix expecting too? Were they like, hey, this is a crazy sci-fi show. We're not going to get a ton of viewers. We understand that. Or are they like, hey, these were super popular books. You adapted Game of Thrones, go make us the next Game of Thrones. Because if that's their expectation, like it has nowhere near the same type of appeal as Game of Thrones.
Well, Netflix only does what, like one or two real big budget things a year, and this is their thing for the year, isn't it? Like
It seems like it's their flagship,
Stranger
yeah,
Things, I
this
don't
year.
think is coming out this year.
And
I don't,
Stranger Things is in its own tier anyway.
yeah.
Like,
But Stranger Things is also, last season, so they've kind of got to find their next thing. The
yeah.
Witcher is, crash and burn basically with that franchise.
I
So
saw an ad for the new season that they're like, I feel like they basically called it a reboot without calling it a reboot in the ad. I can't remember the words they used for it. It was just like a still image, but it was like watch watch our legend continue, or I can't remember how they said it, but it was like, okay, so you're leaning into the recasting as like a, I don't know, feels like a rebrand, but
we know it's not Henry Cavill, but it's still okay.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know that if they expected Three Body Problem to be their next Stranger Things, I think that's they need to have different expectations there. But
Yeah, honestly, if I'm a big studio exec and I'm like, I want something that's gonna have mass appeal. I'm not saying these are the shows I want, but this is the way these people think, right? I gotta have lots of viewers, gotta have all my metrics great, I gotta get my bonus from the board, whatever. I don't know if I'm betting on Three Body Problem.
well, the other thing is like the reason Stranger Things got so much appeal is because it was super well made. It wasn't made to be marketed to the masses. You know, it wasn't like, how can we make this be the most appealing to the most people? It was, this is the idea we have, and we're going to execute it as well as we can. And it happened to be really popular, you know? Whereas it feels like from the get-go with Three Body Problem, there's been a lot of how can you make this be more popular and how you're adapting it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, well, hopefully we get more seasons. If you want to chat with us, let us know what details we missed. Like we said, we both read these books a while ago, loved them, but admittedly, our memory is a little bit foggy, although we did try to, we did our best to refresh going in. So there's that. You can chat with us on our Discord. Links are in the episode description below. Thanks for watching. Jake, see you later.
See you guys.